Welcome to the Putback on SNY.TV. I'm Ian Begley, SNY's NBA insider. We're here to talk all things Knicks and the NBA. We got two great guests with us today, two people you were very familiar with. One, CP the Fanchise of Knicks Fan TV, and also Bobby Marks, ESPN NBA front office insider. We welcome both back to the show. Looking forward to getting into everything with you guys, and be sure to leave your comments in the replies below. We'll get to your questions, comments as well, but we are going to start with the baseline. OG Anunoby coming back early. I think roughly 5 weeks after his surgery. So he beat the timetable to get back on the floor, and he looked very good in his debut there. Knicks obviously beating the Sixers handily. Anunoby kind of sliding in as easily as he did in his first game as a Knick after the trade. Just looking very comfortable and being very impactful. And now the Knicks should have OG Anunoby back for this stretch run. So I want to start, CP, there with Anunoby and how different this club looks when he is on the floor. What are you seeing?
Yeah, Ian, the vibes are indeed immaculate last night in the Knicks win over the Sixers and OG Anunoby's return. He was everything that the Knicks missed. Immediately in the first quarter, he dives onto the floor, gets a deflection, causes a loose ball, the Knicks get the ball. He jumps into the passing lane, gets a steal, and he dunks the ball. Later on in the evening, he's taking Tyrese Maxey out of the game. I mean, the numbers when OG Anunoby plays for the Knicks are just staggering. Plus 28 last night, plus 280 in his 15 games with the Knicks. And what's most impressive is that teams are shooting minus 9.1% less in terms of effective field goal percentage when OG Anunoby's out there on the court. And then offensively, he goes 2 for 5 from downtown. He's a corner three-point shooter that this offense can rely upon. Overall, 6 of 11 from the field. So he's providing that efficiency on the offensive end as well. You saw some shot creation ability from OG, and so the Knicks have just been dominant when he plays.
That's CP. I didn't know you turned into Kevin Pelton on us. I like it, man. Thank you for bringing the numbers.
Well, I was in the glass research today. So, yeah.
Bobby, I think we're roughly 10 weeks from the deal with Toronto getting RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and a valuable second rounder. Knicks getting back Precious Achiuwa, Malachi Flynn, and obviously OG. How do you assess that move so far, and what have you thought about OG's impact?
Well, listen, it's been a win-win. I think certainly for both teams. I know Toronto was going in a different direction, building more with younger players and kind of taking a little bit of a step back. I think you saw before OG got injured and Julius Randle got injured that this New York team is a top 3 team when healthy in the Eastern Conference. I think they can compete against Boston. They can compete against Milwaukee. Certainly Miami, some of the other teams. Now it's just a matter of getting Julius back and getting to the stretch run in one piece. I remember when the trade happened on December 30th, and I had done my video and I said, don't disregard Precious Achiuwa as far as what New York is getting, and don't think it's just a throw in here. And I said, before Toronto got Jakob Poeltl last year at the deadline, he had been playing really good basketball in Toronto, and his minutes started to come down. And I thought he was good in Toronto before then. And you've seen firsthand, based on probably more of an emergency, based on the injuries here, he has a lot of value to the Knicks here. Now, when you get to the playoffs and Tibbs shortened his rotation to 8 guys, how does he fit in? That's the big unknown here. But I think it's certainly has set New York up for the future as far as with OG and Jalen, and you've got to figure out what some of your other free agent moves, and then the Bogdanovic and Burks trade kind of it helped because of the timing. The timing, if you didn't have those two guys, I don't know where they would be. And I know 8 and 10, I think, when with the MASH unit that they had and everything. But you just look at the difference of Sunday night, the game that probably none of us will ever watch again, compared to Tuesday night. Last night was a playoff game. I think at least for New York, I felt like they treated it like a playoff game. Get off this 26-14, boom, right off the bat, right? Like, kind of imposed their will on them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you talk about last night, Josh Hart, triple-double fourth triple-double this season for the Knicks, one of 6 players in franchise history to get to 4 in a season. And, you know, if you watch this team night in and night out, you know his impact. I think fans were a little disappointed with the contract early on because he wasn't shooting the ball particularly well. But when you look at that extension, Bobby, and you see what Hart has done so far with this deal, how do you feel about the value of that extension now and moving forward?
Yeah, listen, I think when people looked at the extension, certainly 4 for 81, about 16, $17 million per, and it's increasing here. You looked at him more of a, certainly as a sixth man, right? That sixth man type money here. But now when you see him more of an expanded role, and he'll probably go back, back to the bench with OG back, but it's still a guy that's going to play probably 25 minutes a night. And it's, I always use the phrase, it's like, you guys are big baseball fans. It's like, those middle innings reliever type guys that can come in the 6th and 7th inning, like those guys got value, guys that can come out there, the specialty glue guys that can make a shot, dive on the ground for a rebound, set screens here. That has a lot of value here. So it's a good contract. I mean, it's, now we'll see what happens when New York gets into the offseason, and they're going to have to prioritize, right? Like that's the reality here. When we take the business part of it and integrate it to the basketball part here, is that they're going to have to prioritize who on their roster is a priority and who's on the roster is a luxury here.
Well, on this show, we're certainly rooting for the Mets middle relief to be as effective as Josh Hart has been for this club. CP, down the stretch, postseason, we don't know who the Knicks are going to match up with. We don't know where they're going to end up seeding-wise. But when you look at Josh Hart, do you see him as one of the more important players for the Knicks in the postseason, what they will or will not do?
He's going to be critical. And I'm not sure if there's any other stat that's indicative of what a player means to a team than the triple-double. I mean, Josh Hart, his 4th triple-double in one season for the Knicks. He racked it up in the 3rd quarter as I was watching that game in MSG. Just impressive what he's done for this team, starting with sacrifice. Sacrificing to allow Dante DiVincenzo to get his money at the mid-level exception. Sacrificing in terms of playing undersized and oftentimes defending players that are much bigger than him. The best defensive rebound or the best rebounding guard in the NBA. I mean, Josh Hart does everything. A key play in last night's game is in going into the half. He fakes a dribble handoff to Jalen Brunson, steps into a three-pointer. On the next possession, he gets a loose ball deflection, runs the break, runs in transition, and then finds Jalen Brunson for a three-pointer in the corner. So Josh Hart's been vital to this team, Ian, but I think where he's ultimately going to be judged in the postseason is going to be his ability to score. As the Knicks are not sure what they're going to have in Julius Randle and his ability to get back to all-star form, teams are going to take the gamble to allow Josh Hart to shoot in the half court, and that's where he's got to be confident and step into those shots in the mid-range as well. The Knicks are going to need his scoring because you know what you're going to get from a rebounding and assist standpoint. He's going to play make, he's going to play relatively smart, but his ability to knock down shots is going to be pivotal for this Knicks team's success in the playoffs.
I thought it was interesting last night. He was left open a few times, and he would pump fake and then put the ball on the deck and look to give it up. And I think that was effective last night, but you also have to mix in the shot attempts. I'm sure they'll find the right blend there. But Bobby, big picture, Leon Rose here for just over 4 years in his role as team president. How do you think he's done overall? Obviously, former agent transitioning to the head of basketball ops here in New York. What do you thought of Rose thus far?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was lofty expectations when Leon came in right before COVID in 2020, the trade deadline of 2020 here, because coming from CA, the ability to bring star level players, the Donovan Mitchell trade that didn't happen. I think people looked at him like, wait a minute, we brought this guy in to get these type of players here. And I think you've seen, certainly with players that he's repped before, whether it be Jalen Brunson or Josh Hart, certainly Julius Randle, at one time, it's more about kind of building relationships, having comfort levels, guys in your locker room that you've had a relationship for 8 or 9 years, not a star level guy that maybe you didn't hear. And now,
I think we may have lost Bobby for a second there, and he was talking about Leon Rose, and I think Leon, I think anybody looking at this thing objectively has to say that Leon has done a very good job so far in a position where, many others have not done a good job and failed over the past 20 plus years. He's navigated some difficult waters, and he's gotten to this team to a point where they have something here that they can build off of. And something I was going to hit on after Bobby spoke was, these guys, the obvious connection to a lot of these guys with Leon Rose is their past at CAA. But I think in this locker room, like there's a confidence about the group and a belief within the group about their ability to compete night in and night out, and an ability to defeat whatever is in front of them, kind of regardless of who's in that lineup. And so whether it's the CA connection or not, the players who are in there, I think, have fostered, a very good approach mentally and from a confidence standpoint to where they feel good every night about what they can do. And that's hard to develop in the NBA. I've been covering the Knicks, 10 plus years. I've seen so many teams that didn't have it, and this group has it. And I just think that's fascinating. CP, for you, Leon Rose, we both at different points have been critical of him, questioning the path. But based on where we are now, how do you see what he's done so far?
It's nothing short of outstanding. And I think the earlier criticism of Leon Rose was, well, he's a big-time former player agent, but he's not bringing any megastars here. He's supposed to be a relationship guy, but he's not using that to bring any megastars here. But if you look at what he's done, they've built the foundation. He brought in Tom Thibodeau, a coach who he had a relationship with. Thibodeau has established the culture here. They've slowly brought in the players that fit Tom Thibodeau's system, that fit his identity. Leon Rose's relationship with the Brunsons allowed Jalen Brunson to get here, one of the best contracts in the NBA last year. That relationship brought Josh Hart here, brought Dante DiVincenzo here. And look at the impact that they're having on this team. You bring in an OG Anunoby who's represented by Sam Rose, and now he's going to be your future wing. The Knicks have needed a wing for years. And so they're slowly putting the pieces together in their vision, in Tom Thibodeau's mold, to put a competitive and hopefully a contending team out there on the floor. Now, can they get to the mountaintop? That's always the hardest thing to do, especially in the NBA. But they're putting the pieces together. The Knicks have stability. They have cohesion right now from the front office all the way down to the players. If you go back to Jalen Brunson's sound bites, whether it's on his podcast or All the Smoke, how he speaks about Tom Thibodeau, their relationship, and Tibbs' ability to keep the team prepared. This organization is in lockstep right now with Tibbs at the helm and Brunson running the show, and Leon Rose has done a great job so far.
Yeah, and hopefully we get Bobby back. And I wanted to ask him, too, about the meeting, the kind of mending of fences between Rich Paul, Clutch CEO, and Leon Rose and William Wesley. And, I think when I was reporting on that stuff, a couple agents texted me like, why is this a big deal? Like, I think that, you're blowing this out of proportion. To me, it wasn't about Rich and his clients. It was just about the Knicks hiring former agents. And because of the relationships, the dynamic that those agents brought to the Knicks, they didn't have access to one of the top player agencies in the NBA. And I thought, that just doesn't make sense from a logical standpoint. So give them credit for kind of bridging that gap, for mending fences, and for now apparently having a working relationship with that group. I think that kind of maybe slid under the radar a little bit. I don't think that's easy. You put your ego to the side, you sit down, and you say we're in a good place now. I thought that was pretty big. Bobby, you are back. We were just talking about the Rich Paul, Leon Rose kind of mending of fences, just from your perspective of so many years in the business. What did you make of that? Was it significant? Was it insignificant?
No, I mean, listen, it's significant because at the end of the day, Rich Paul is going to be representing a lot more players than DeJounte Murray and LeBron James and the list of Anthony Davis, the list of players that he has right now. He could have, potentially two players that maybe New York drafts this offseason here with that Dallas pick in their own pick. So I think you have to have a relationship here. Have to kind of put whatever happened in the past behind you. But yeah, I mean, it's a two-way street, right? Like, Rich Paul needs Leon Rose, whether it comes down to contract negotiations, if a player gets traded there, whether it be a draft pick. And Leon Rose needs Clutch and Rich Paul, just like he needs Jeff Schwartz or Mark Bartelstein or Bill Duffy or any of these other agents. You have to kind of put your personal feelings aside and what's best for the New York Knicks.
Now, when you look at the big picture too, Bobby, I'm just kind of looking ahead here at the free agency that the Knicks may have with their own guys, with OG Anunoby, Isaiah Hartenstein. The more restrictive rules come into effect this coming season. So with where they are and what those guys would command, where would they end up if they sign those guys to like competitive salaries, re-sign them? Are they first apron territory, second apron territory? And how much is that an issue?
Well, a little mid-afternoon math lesson here. How's that sound?
Yes, please.
So I'm looking at their cap sheet right now. They've got right now, this includes the OG option, which probably could double, right? That $19 million number could potentially double here. They're at $144 million, okay? That includes the Bojan Bogdanovic. It's got $2 million in protection. Let's say non-guaranteed contract. That's guaranteed at the end of June. Now, remember, you've got 2 draft picks here. So if you keep both those picks, you add another $6 million to your cap ledger. That gets you up to 150. Now that Anunoby contract doubles, right? That's plus. See, the numbers start adding up here. That gets you up to almost luxury tax territory here, and that doesn't even include getting into your own free agents. So Achiuwa, Hartenstein, Alec Burks is probably more of a luxury in the offseason than a priority. You probably can maybe fill that in the free agent marker, or maybe you hit on one of your draft picks. So yes, you can bring all these guys back. Like, you've got early bird rights on Hartenstein, meaning you can bring them back to a contract right around $16-17 million, somewhere in that range. You've got Achiuwa as a restricted free agent, got bird rights. You can exceed the salary cap. Anunoby's got bird rights. You can exceed the salary cap. I think the big question, what do you do with Bogdanovic? But here's the hard part. You waive him, then you don't have one of those big tradable contracts in case somebody else becomes available. It's similar like what was going to happen if they never did anything with Evan Fournier. Certainly Bogdanovic's a better player, but it's similar to what New York was going to be looking at if Fournier wasn't traded here. So the cost certainly starts to add up here. And then you look in the future, Brunson's extension eligible this offseason. It wouldn't start for 2 years from now. Randle's extension eligible. It does start to get expensive here, certainly where these restrictions are. The second apron, as I said all along, this year was kind of get your house in order year. Get your house in order. The apron, second apron, first apron really did not have much bite. But when we get into the offseason here, starting April 15th, the restrictions come into play. The inability, if you're a second apron team, to aggregate contracts, the inability to take back more money, the inability to send out cash in the deal, use your trade exceptions here. If you're exceeding the salary, that has some restrictions as far as. So if you go out and let's say at the end of the day, New York brings back everyone, right? There's no they pull Phoenix and say, you know what, we don't have a budget. We don't care about the luxury tax. We don't care about the rules. Now all of a sudden, player X superstar Karl-Anthony Towns, for example, becomes available. Well, we're not going to be able to go get him because now we're a second apron team and we don't have the contracts to be able to go out and send. And New York has done Brock Aller and Leon and Frank Zanin and Gerson, Rose. They've done a terrific job staggering their contracts, descending contract, the Brunson contract, certainly the Randle extension. They've got guys making below $30 million here, and they're all good value deals. So they can do it, but it's just going to be a matter of kind of priority as far as who they bring back.
It's going to be fascinating, all those moving parts. Matt Spenley, lead social media exec at SNY, is also the guy who's talking to the fans in the comments section, bringing fan questions to the show. Matt, how are you, and what do you have for us?
I'm doing great, fellas. Thank you for the exec today, Ian. You're really stepping me up. Each show, you kind of move me up the ladder a little bit, move me up the hierarchy. I like it.
I'm in charge of the flow chart, so it's...
I like that. Tell it to all the bosses here, too, all right? Let them know. CP, I'm coming to you with this one. This one's from Yo Ed on YouTube. Knowing how Tibbs values defense over offense, if everyone's healthy in the playoffs, what do you see the bench rotation being?
The bench rotation, well, it depends on how many guys you're going to play. Is he going to go 8? Is he going to go 9? Obviously, when Julius comes back, Josh Hart is sixth man automatically. You have to factor in a big man. Is that going to be Mitchell Robinson, depending on how Mitch looks, when he's going to be ready to come back and how good a shape he's in? So you have to figure it's either Mitch, could be Precious as well. And then I think for defensively, you have to put McBride out there. The way that he's defending and shooting the 3 ball quite efficiently and playmaking, he's doing what the Knicks have been looking for when they brought Alec Burks in here. And so I think it's definitely Hart, a big man, let's say Mitch for now. And then I would also say Deuce McBride is certainly 8. Now, for number 9, I think there could be spots where you could use a Bogdanovich for his 3-point shooting, or maybe even you could use a Burks for his 3-point shooting. Those guys are going to need to come in and handle limited roles, just be outside spot-up shooters for the Knicks' capable playmakers. The issue with Bogdanovich, I think, is they have to be careful in how many minutes they're going to give him, because he's going to be a hot target against opposing offenses when he's out there defending. I mean, he's been Swiss cheese on the defensive end, so he's going to be a target. But I think they're going to need to find room to find his shooting in the playoffs, because it could be valuable.
Reference the injuries, CP. We're just going to do a quick rundown on those. Mitchell Robinson, pretty positive. Tom Thibodeau said last night that he should be cleared for on-court contact soon. Julius Randle, a little bit different, has not been cleared yet for on-court contact. Doing controlled contact where you kind of know what the move is and you're able to prepare for that contact, but it's not live. It's not unpredictable. He's been sitting kind of in that spot for a little while now, and we mentioned it earlier in the week. It's led to some concern as to why it hasn't happened yet, but obviously the Knicks are going to be cautious there. Randle is going to be cautious there. I haven't spoken to anyone who would have a good read on this thing who said, hey, it's unlikely he comes back, and people think he's going to come back. Just a matter of when and how he deals with that contact once he is back on the court. Obviously, you get Anunoby back last night, and he looks good. So that's kind of where we are with the injuries. But where we are as a show, you can also find us on podcast form right now. So it's not just YouTube, not just Twitter, not just SNY.TV, but we're also on your podcast platform. So be sure to check us out there. And Bobby, you mentioned as a hypothetical, Karl-Anthony Towns. So now we're going to go stargazing, a little segment we like to hit every week here, because when we talk about the Knicks, we talk about Leon Rose bringing in stars, and eventually the big swing, I think, still will happen. Bobby, when you look at Minnesota, and you had a great conversation with Zach Lowe about this on the Low Post podcast, just kind of where they are now, Towns' injury, and then looking ahead at the finances. I'm asking you to predict something here, but if they maybe get to the second round and go out, do you think finances would play a role into what they do in the offseason, and would they have to, maybe consider trading a player like Towns because of the financials involved?
Yeah, listen, it's going to get expensive. And the Towns injury benefits Anthony Edwards from an All-NBA standpoint, because you add Edwards to the All-NBA mix now, which is like we're looking at a process of elimination here. That's an extra $40 million. It's an extra $7 million per year. They extended Mike Conley, their second apron team. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. They are in there with the big boys as far as how spending is. I think it's interesting when Towns comes back, how healthy he is. Is it the second round? Is it the first round here? Owners, if you lose in the first round and you're completely healthy, yes, you are reevaluating your roster here if you have one of those expensive lineups. I think they do get a little bit of a break because of the injury. As far as where they see themselves, they're the number 1 seed before the injury. They've played pretty decent basketball since here. It's just hard for me to see new ownership coming in all of a sudden and then starting to slash payroll, especially where this team has been. And this team can stay in the top 3 or 4 for the foreseeable future here. So we'll see. Every front office is different. I think you see when you get through the off season, when their season ends, you reevaluate. But it's hard for me to say, yeah, all of a sudden ownership's going to slash payroll because they're a second apron team. This team still has a lot of upside. I still think they have a lot of upside with Edwards and McDaniels, and certainly Gobert, and then you have Conley and then Naz Reid. They've got good players here. It's not a an older team where you're going to, want to take a step back.
CP, Towns fit potentially. Where are you on that?
Yeah, I think offensively he would fit quite nicely here with this Knicks team. It would have to be at the expense of Julius Randle. I don't see those two coexisting in the Knicks front court where Tom Thibodeau prioritizes defense and front end rim protection. And so I don't see those two guys coexisting here. And so the question is, will the Knicks be willing to trade Julius Randle in an attempt to bring Karl-Anthony Towns here? I think the tricky thing is that you're going into another postseason where you're not going to get Julius Randle at 100%. And so you're not really clear on, is this guy going to be a piece here for the future with this team, or is he just going to keep them capped at a certain ceiling? And so Towns is interesting, but I think from the star front, I would also ask Bobby from a salary aggregation standpoint. We talked about some of the guys on the contract now. The Bogdanovich contract, it's a partial guarantee before the new league year. What is an example scenario in terms of aggregating contracts that the Knicks would need to pull together to get a guy like either a Towns or even a Donovan Mitchell from Cleveland?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Mitchell's less expensive, right? He hasn't. He's still kind of in that extension that he signed in Utah. He's mid to high mid 30s. Towns is going into year one of the Supermax. I mean, that number is a whopper, right? $50 million next year. That's what it starts at. So you're looking at, if you want to be careful and you don't want to hard cap yourself, taking back more money hard caps you. So now you're looking at Randle, Bogdanovic, something else in there to make it work from a financial, certainly draft picks. But here's the problem. Now you would have Towns, OG, and Brunson.
I think Bobby dropped, but he was talking about aggregating salaries and figuring it out from a math standpoint. To me, comes down to A-Rod, the part owner of the T-Wolves. Does he have any George Steinbrenner in him? Is he just going to write checks and try to bring a title to Minnesota, or is he going to go a little cheaper and try to pinch the penny? So A-Rod, it's on you, man. Let's see what happens. Let's see what you do. We do have Bobby back now, and we're going to go to Matt Spenley, who has a question for Mr. Marks.
What's up, guys? I don't know if you'll be able. Oh, there I am. Okay. I wanted to ask about Precious Achiuwa because you mentioned he's going to be a restricted free agent, and I know we've talked about OG and Hartenstein, and OG we expect to be back. I know, Ian, you've mentioned that the Knicks are interested in bringing Hartenstein back. So just with Precious and his status, but how well he's played, do they see him as a potential fit for the roster moving forward? I know he's a restricted free agent, so they'll be able to, potentially do some things to keep him. But do we have any feel on how they view Precious moving forward?
I would expect him to get a qualifying offer by June 30th, by the end of June here, of June 29th. It's hard, especially if with Robinson coming back and then paying Isaiah to commit three players, making $40 million per season total with three guys here. And that's it comes down to, it's almost like the Alec Burks question, probably not in that same realm, priority or luxury, right? Who's a priority? Who's a luxury here? And I think certainly what you would do is you qualify him, you put a number out there, whether it be, I don't know, $8 million, for example, here, and say, you know what, go shop. Would a team come in and give you the non-tax mid-level at $12.9 million? And then you figure out maybe it's too expensive for us to keep. But I think at the very minimum, they'll extend him a qualifying offer. They'll see what the market will be. Really, do players sign that qualifying offer? But he has been, as I said earlier, he's been really, really good for them. You wouldn't be able to go out and get him in free agency probably because of, if he was in Toronto, it would be hard for you to go out and get as a free agent just because of that restricted tag.
It's one thing you love about pro sports. We would not be having this conversation. You'd think Precious Achiuwa's first couple weeks as a Knick, this would be a non-topic, and now here we are. He's surged the past few weeks, and you have to have the conversation about Achiuwa's future in New York. So it's going to be interesting to see how Leon Rose and the group play things out. But we want to look ahead, Bobby, because I believe that you in the preseason had the Knicks going to the finals. You got everybody very excited here in New York. Are you sticking by it? Are you getting off it? Are you going Boston? Where are you right now?
No, listen. If we're going off Sunday night, then I'm not. I'm jumping off the horse. Now, if you're rolling into the playoffs with Brunson, Bojan, Burks, and Hart and Dante, and that's it, then I would say, well, no, I'm going to take a step back. But if the cavalry is coming, and I think you saw it last night in the Philly game, then I'm staying with it, man. I think there's flaws with Boston. I think the inability sometimes to close down the stretch it could be an Achilles for them. Well, you guys know it's going to be about matchups, right? I think you got to get out of that 4. You got to get up to 3 somehow. Milwaukee had a bad loss in Sacramento. I don't trust them at all. So you can't. The one thing you don't want to do is 4-5 Miami, New York, and then basically a steel cage match, and then get Boston in round 2. Yeah. Like you want to be. The longer these playoffs go, the better it benefits New York as far as getting to an Eastern Conference Finals because of injuries that happen and everything like that. And I think it's all about kind of matchups, who you get in the first round, and staying out of that top half of the bracket.
Bobby, you speak for yourself, man. I would love Knicks Heat first round and then second round matchup with Boston. That would be a lot of fun. CP, 4-game road trip coming up, starting Portland Thursday night, ending in Denver in the middle of next week. What are you looking for on this road trip? OG back. What are you kind of monitoring, and how do the Knicks succeed out there?
Winnable games. I'd be happy if they come away with this at 2-2, and even more thrilled if they come back at 3-1. Portland's a much winnable game. The Sacramento Kings have had an inconsistent season. They're looking for some consistency there. I think the Knicks can go in there and take that one. Golden State will certainly be tough, whether or not Stephen Curry plays. And then the champs. Denver is they are playing at a championship level right now, and they're going to remember that the Knicks put the smackdown on them just a couple months back at Madison Square Garden. So I don't see the Knicks winning that one, but like I said, 2-2 or 3-1 would be ideal to come back from the road trip.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see how it plays out on the trip. In the meantime, we thank you, Bobby Marks, ESPN front office NBA insider. We thank you, CP, the Fanchise, Knick Fan TV. You guys are always fantastic. Appreciate you coming back. As for us, the Putback will be back next Wednesday at 12 p.m. So we will see you then. We'll continue to talk all things Knicks and the NBA. And thanks for joining us.